So a few days ago, I made a video talking about why I think it would be better use of our energy if the left put their energy more into organizing, and especially the online left, because I feel like this is a very online issue of organizing with Black organizers and reaching the working class people, like the millions and millions of working class people, as opposed to spending a lot of energy into trying to convert Nazis over, when relatively it's going to be a smaller amount of people who also come in bringing a lot of issues. And again, I pointed out that it's not bad to try to convert Nazis. It's just really a part of where are we spending our energy to try to have a viable leftist movement. So this video was controversial, and I was just gonna leave it at that. I was just gonna kind of leave the video at that. But then a few people messaged me and said, hey, this person called Xanderhal is responding to your video in a stream. I'm not sure who he is, but I looked on his Twitter and it said that he's a debate bro, which is a bit of a red flag to me. Just to give a little bit of background about myself, I used to really like debate videos. I used to really like Destiny, and I actually used to even like Vosh. I think it's fun watching videos where people debunk stuff. But there's a lot of issues that have happened with people saying stuff. People really believe that they're intellectually and morally superior than people because they can win a debate, when it's very clearly demonstrated that winning a debate isn't necessarily about being right. It's about using proper strategies to win a debate. And people will claim this this moral objectivity and superiority when they just use debate strategies, and they don't really see the difference between objectivity and subjectivity. The lines get really blurred there. This kind of strategy is used to make a lot of really messed up claims, and that's my issue with the debate bro community. People have said a lot of messed up stuff, and then they feel really morally justified in it, and they seem unable to have a conversation about how that thing is messed up, because they really believe that they're objectively right because they've used debate strategies. I can understand the appeal in watching debate videos. I love watching things get debunked. I think it's fascinating, but I think the culture that's come out of it has been very toxic. It's just so fundamentally flawed at this point. All that to say, I don't know anything about Xanderhal, but I have an issue with the debate bro culture. Any critique of him, this is just me watching him for the first time, and there's been some tweets and stuff that people have told me about, but I don't really know a whole lot, so that's where I'm coming from at this point. So I thought it'd be I don't know, draining. I thought it'd be interesting. That's the word I'm looking for. I thought it'd be interesting to react to this reaction. Let me show you all where I started with Xanderhal. This is the first thing that I saw from him.
All right, so usually in my videos and my responses, I'm pretty mean. Maybe not mean, but rude. I do little dunks, I attack people's appearance or whatever, and I can be a little bit rude to people, but it's all in good fun, right? It's for the entertainment, I'm not going to do that in this video, because I genuinely think the person I'm going to be responding to is acting in good faith, but I disagree with them on some things.
Are people catching this? Are people catching the thing that I'm because sometimes I wonder when I watch these debate videos, I'm how are people watching this and aren't thinking what the fuck? So basically the reason why I'm just what? Because this is the first thing. I've never seen a video by this person. This is the first thing that I see, is he's having a video where he's saying, now normally I'd make fun of people, I'd make fun of their parents and stuff, but today I'm not going to. You're the fact that you have to warn your audience, hey guys, normally you're probably gonna be wondering, why aren't you being as mean? You're probably gonna be wondering, why aren't you being mean? The fact that that's your audience will be wondering, why aren't you being as mean to this person? That's the audience you have, that you have to warn them, I'm not gonna be as mean today. That's a red flag. Okay, this is my introduction to Xanderhal being hey, I would make fun of your appearance, but I think you're talking in good faith, so I'm not gonna make fun of you. Do you want me to say thank you, Xanderhal? Do you want me to say thanks for not making fun of me? Thank you. I'm a very insecure person. Thanks for not going there.
I'm going to turn up the speed just a little bit too, because, we're going to turn it up to 1.25, because I don't believe this video is all that edited to my memory, so.
I'm going to stop you right there. Yes, this video is edited. Why the try not to cuss as much because I can't monetize stuff, and it's not that I want money, it's that I want my stuff to be in the algorithm. Why do you think that I'm sliding to the right and sliding to the left? Why do you think that I'm zooming in and panning slowly? You have a 6-hour stream that's unedited, and you're telling me who, spends hours editing stuff, that it's not edited. It's edited, folks, it's edited. Sorry, that's a minor nitpicky thing. It's just, I edit my videos And I'm like, what are you talking about that it's not edited? This is edited. I changed the light, the filter and the lighting, and I like do like these nice little zoom ins to be like really intense. And I, move from left to right a lot. And then I do like, crops. And I think about these things. I put music in there, like it's edited, okay? But let's go watch this unedited critique of me.
No one's forcing you to be friends with another person, okay? Especially not in our political movement, right? However, this is very important. Let's say there is a protest, a BLM protest.
Okay, so this white person is going to tell me, a black person, how to do a Black Lives Matter protest. Let's find out what he's going to say. Let's find out what valuable information this person's going to say.
You're completely fine to not want to associate privately when it comes to friendships with people. When it comes to getting together to achieve real political change, don't do this shit. Don't do the whole, you had bad opinions 4 years ago, and even though you're better now, we can't work together because you used to be bad, right? Don't do this kind of shit.
There's going to be people who don't want to work with people who are ex-Nazis, and they don't have to do that. Again, like I said in my video, there's people who I used to know, or who I know who used to be on the alt-right, and I think they're perfectly fine to work with. And there's people where it's like, they don't really seem like they've changed, but they seem like they have a lot of issues and it'd be hard to work with them. So I'm not going to work with those people. There's people who, even if someone has seemed to sincerely change, there's going to be people who don't feel comfortable working with people who are ex-Nazis. You can't force people to be okay working with people who had ideologies and beliefs that have hurt them. I mean, you can try to force people to do that, but that's messed up. Let people have their own agency and decide for themselves if they want to work with people who had ideologies and beliefs that used to hurt them. If you feel that way, that's fine, but you can't force people to believe that. And it's understandable if people don't feel comfortable with that. You're not the same as everyone else. You don't know where people are coming from. You don't know the trauma that people hold and are working through. So don't force that on people. You don't get to decide that for anyone, but you especially don't get to decide for Black people that we have to just suddenly be okay with working with people who are ex-Nazis. There are some Black people who are going to be okay with that, and there's some Black people who aren't going to be, but you don't get to decide that for anyone, but especially you as a white person, you don't get to decide that for Black people. The fact that I'm making this video, do you know what a joke this is? Like, do you know how silly it is that I have to sit here in a leftist space and talk about how that is just silly? Here we go. Let's keep on going on this magical journey. I'm having fun, aren't you?
And even though you're better now, we can't work together because you used to be bad, right? Don't do this kind of shit, all right? It is embarrassing.
I should be embarrassed. I should be embarrassed. You're telling people at Black Lives Matter protest, many of which are Black, you're telling them that if you don't want to work with an ex-Nazi that you should feel embarrassed. You're saying that, and it's like, I should feel embarrassed. Okay. I feel very embarrassed. I feel really embarrassed for you because this is cringy.
It is harmful to the entire progressive movement. All right, let's continue.
I think if someone used to be a Nazi, and that comes along with like being transphobic, and it obviously comes along with being racist, there's gonna be people who are like, hey, like, I'm Black, and I don't feel comfortable working with you. And that's fair. There are people who
I don't think that's fair. I'm gonna be completely honest.
No! You don't get to decide for Black people their boundaries. Again, what makes you think that as a white person, you get to decide for Black people if they feel comfortable working with ex-Nazis or not? Where the heck do you get off? Like, the fact that this video, like, there's like 10 dislikes, right? There's like 10. It's like the fact that his audience doesn't catch how messed up this stuff is like, this is the issue that I'm talking about with like online LeftTube. Just the fact that like, this just goes under the radar. It's like, what's happening?
Curious what they mean by working. I'm assuming by working they mean political activism. I mean like going to protests, like doing direct action, praxis, fucking mutual aid, like things like that. If you are willing to sacrifice productivity when it comes to pushing a progressive agenda to make the world better because someone used to be racist and they aren't anymore, that is pathetic.
Xander, that's what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that in focusing on converting Nazis, you are sacrificing productivity. You're not going to have a mass movement trying to convince people who strongly disagree with us. You are going to have a mass movement focusing on the working class who has to live out these real, very real issues where it's like people need food, people don't have enough income, people are going to lose housing. Those people will much more easily become leftists because they have these real life issues, and the left online isn't really reaching these people, and that's a problem. At the same time, you have Black Black people organizing, and they're doing a lot of great work. And the left online isn't really reaching out to these Black organizers who are organizing in person as well. That's the issue I'm talking about. So saying that sacrificing productivity is pathetic, you're calling yourself pathetic. And like, I wasn't gonna say it because that's kind of mean. But since you said it first, yeah, I wasn't gonna say anything, but yeah, that's pathetic.
That is pathetic. On top of that, and I will die on this hill, okay? I think that a leftist who used to be a reactionary, who realized it was wrong, and is now progressive, is a more effective leftist than someone who's been a leftist their whole lives. I will die on that hill. And you know why? It's because people who used to be alt-righters, people who used to be Nazis, they heard all the arguments, all the beliefs that Nazis and alt-righters have, and that conservatives have. And in the end, they still realized it was all wrong.
Do you think that we haven't? Do you think that everyone else isn't hearing all the arguments? Do you think that I, as a Black person, don't know all the arguments for why people think that we're less than human? Do you really think that I don't know? Do you think that trans people don't know all the arguments for why they're not as valid? Do you really think that? The people who are oppressed have very important insight, probably have the most important insight onto their oppression. An ex-Nazi is not going to have more insight about racism than a Black person. And that doesn't mean that like someone who's an ex-Nazi doesn't have valuable opinions, but the people who do have the most valuable opinions, who can speak the most to it, are the people who go through that oppression. Again, it's disturbing because this person saying that ex-Nazis actually are the most valuable in these circumstances. And again, do I have to go into too much detail about like why that's an issue? Like why valuing ex-Nazis over just Black people, over the opinions of Black people, or thinking that like ex-Nazis have more insight about these issues than Black people would?
I have to say this right now. A lot of my arguments and knowledge against the right comes from me having believed a lot of these things and having changed my opinion because I heard the counter arguments to these people's beliefs. So I basically got into politics knowing what the right believes and knowing how to argue against it because it worked for me.
I feel like this person's trying to make a case for converting neo-Nazis and alt-righters over to the left by saying like, I used to think this way and now I don't, so look at me as the example of why that worked out. And like, that's exactly why I'm saying this is the issue. Like, we have this culture of debate bros who have a hard time listening to any criticism, who have a hard time, again, engaging with Black people, people of color. And then it creates this very toxic culture of intellectual superiority. And again, like there's good things about debate culture. It's entertaining. It does appeal to people who are neo-Nazis and help de-radicalize them, although it ends up leaving them in a place that's still not that great. But again, like that's what ends up happening. Here I am just trying to make a video saying that, we could really put our energy into the tens of millions. We could put our energy into the masses of people because there's all these people who are facing eviction. There's all these people who are unemployed. There's all these people living paycheck to paycheck. And they may not be a radical leftist, but they could be if we reach them. There's all these people that we're not really reaching out to that we could be. There's all these Black people organizing that we're not collaborating with. And the fact that you don't understand how exactly that is because you haven't been collaborating with Black people. It's like, I'm trying to point out these issues and here you are making this video just telling me that I should feel embarrassed about myself and calling me pathetic. It's like, this is what I'm talking about. This is the issue that I'm talking about. It's a perfect case study. And yeah, shoot, I'm going to tuck this away for later.
And I think that's very effective when it comes to political advocacy, especially when it comes to any anti-fascist action. I'm not talking about like Antifa at riots and stuff.
The fact that he's calling like Antifa riots, like there were riots, but most of the Black Lives Matter protests were actually peaceful. And it's just kind of frustrating because it's like a very right-winger thing to do, to be like, when it's a riot, call it Antifa. And then if it's protest, it's like Black Lives Matter. When really like these are kind of like all the same groups of people. It's just kind of like, it's, it comes off as a dog whistle. You know what I'm saying? I don't think this person actually is trying to do that. I don't think this person is, an alt-righter But that's kind of like some behavior that you often see in right-winger spaces, and kind of having it in a leftist space is a problem.
What I do on my channel is anti-fascist. I'm engaging in anti-fascist action on my channel. When I debunk some Nazi YouTuber, that is anti-fascist action, because I'm taking Nazis and reactionaries and centrists and people who could be susceptible to Nazi ideology or fascist ideology online and pulling them to the left. That is anti-fascist action. It's not just when you're out in the street doing stuff in real life. Real life stuff is important, but you know what I mean, right?
This person just comes off as someone who finds himself to be so important. Like, he really thinks that his stream that creates a debate bro culture of moral and intellectual superiority is actually a viable movement on the left. It's just fascinating. It's fascinating to see. And I want to note that, again, if you're someone who finds these debate videos important to get out of the right, or de-radicalize yourself, I think that's good. But again, the culture that often comes out of the debate bro is not a helpful culture. It's not a direction that I think leftism should move in. I don't think it's at all useful. And so investing ourselves into this kind of a superiority complex is just creating another issue for ourselves. And that's the thing that I'm criticizing. And just given the way that this person's talking in this video, it seems like a lot of his rhetoric is just feeding that fire.
And this is all setting aside the fact that, like, let's be honest here. Most of these 90%, I would guess, of these ex-Nazi types that are now leftists got pulled into it when they were teenagers. They were teenagers. Kids. Come on.
Okay, listen up. We all grew up in white supremacy. I was, indoctrinated into white supremacy. We all were. We all grew up in this white supremacist and sexist culture. That doesn't mean that I trust everybody. The issue here is that this is the society that we grew up in. There are people who grew up with these ideologies. And so when you're de-radicalizing yourself, when you're decolonizing yourself, we live in a society where a lot of these things are the norm. And so you don't necessarily, and so trusting that people are going to be able to actually be a real ally is something that is not going to come easy, because we live under capitalism and we live under colonialism. If someone's wary about that, then that is just a part of being in the kind of world we live in. So rather than shaming people for not trusting you because you used to be a Nazi, maybe try to actually show that you could be a reliable ally. If you want to say that you're a reliable ally, again, it would be something like, I have apologized for this, and so here's kind of where I've had statements about this, but I understand why you're upset, because things are really messed up. And it makes sense that you'd have a hard time trusting people in this way. If someone's sincerely sorry, if someone understands the gravity of the situation, you would think that that would be their response, not, well, I already said sorry.
If someone's clearly made a decisive effort to make up for bad things they've said or done in the past, and no matter what they do, forever, people keep bringing it up as ammo against them, it is very, very frustrating. And I feel like people who haven't gone through that can't empathize with it.
See, but I literally talk about that. I say how it's probably really frustrating and hard where when you apologize something to have it being kept brought up. Like, maybe there is something where you gave a sincere apology and people haven't seen it yet, and that might change their opinion or something. Or it's probably hard where to be on the internet and have people bring that up constantly when you're sincerely sorry. Like, he's talking about having a generous argument in good faith, and here he is responding to things that I already qualified and talked about. Yeah, next time Xanderhal replies to me, don't tell me about it, okay? Just don't tell me about it. I don't need to know. I don't need to interact with this person. All right, let's go.
A lot of lefties still do this to Shu as well. Don't get me wrong, Shu On Head has plenty of things worthy of criticism. In fact, I would actually like to debate Shu On Head on some of the populist takes that she has, because I think some of her takes when it comes to populism are mega cringe. I would like to debate her on that, but the difference between how I would go about arguing with Shu, or trying to convert her, or try to change her mind on certain issues, is very different from how a lot of people on lefty Twitter would do it. People on lefty Twitter would call her a Nazi and bring up things that she said 5 to 6 years ago and apologized for a long time ago, and try to claim that she's a bad person now because she said or did those things a long time ago, even though she made up for it and apologized. People still bring up that Leslie Jones clip. She's apologized for it. She's acknowledged why it's wrong. She's moved on. She's trying to make up for that.
This happened years ago, so I haven't followed it very closely. So there might have been this, acceptable and, in my mind, apology from Shu On Head. But basically what happened is there was this woman, a black woman, and someone said that she looked like an ape or something. And then Shu On Head either agreed or was like, yeah, this person looks like an ape. Obviously, that's very offensive. We don't have to go into why that's offensive. I was watching this clip of Shu On Head with Vosh, actually. And in that clip, it kind of just felt like Vosh was saying, this came up years ago. Why are we talking about it? And then she was kind of like, yeah, it did come up years ago. And it felt so disingenuous to me. Like, it felt like, oh, like you're not actually sorry about it. You just want people to stop talking about it. And that's how it felt to me. Again, there might be somewhere a more sincere apology that I haven't seen. I think she's tweeted about it. And this is just like from the knowledge that I know. But it just, when people do that, when people say something really hurtful and it comes off as like, well, I already said sorry, it doesn't feel sincere, and that's not necessarily someone who I would want to collaborate with. And the thing is, when I watch Shuan Head's content, I think she's so funny. I think she's really funny. I like the editing, and she puts this stuff out really regularly and it's really good quality. But then there's like other stuff where I'm like, well, when I was a kid, someone like made fun of me and said I looked like a monkey. And so it's like, to me, when I hear that stuff and I don't know if there's a sincere apology, it's like, well, do you just think that if you see me, like, would you compare me to monkey in your head, but you just wouldn't say it out loud? And that makes me feel uncomfortable that I don't really know. There's a lot of things like that where it's like, okay, people know not to say something, but have they actually sincerely changed, or do they still think that stuff and just know not to say it? And for me personally, that's something that I am not sure. And that's something where it's like, as much as I want to love Shuan Head and be like, oh, this person's changed, because I don't have that information, or maybe that just simply hasn't happened, I don't feel comfortable with that person. I feel really complicated when that person comes up.
Someone's political ideology doesn't determine on whether or not they're a good person. This is so important. Just because someone's on the left and is progressive politically doesn't mean they're a good person. It's true.
Okay. All right. Sorry. No, I'm not sorry. Okay, let's go.
There are people on the left that they aren't going to like you for some reason or another, and they will use any excuse to go after you.
There's people who just aren't going to like you for some reason or like, I can't explain this in clearer terms. Like, I don't know how clear I can be about this stuff. It's just so frustrating to me that people are like, I just don't know why people don't seem to like this person, but haters gonna hate. And it's like, no, people are telling you in clear terms, this is the issue that they have with you. Like, they cannot be clearer. I don't know. I honestly, I bet you this is what's gonna happen. This person's just gonna be like, wow. This person's gonna watch this and be like, what a hater. You just watch. Hater's gonna hate, tater's gonna tate, and they're gonna write it off as that or something. I hope I'm wrong. Xander, I hope I can reach you. Okay.
However, you should do your best. Obviously, if someone says, hey, you used to believe these terrible things, like, how can I trust you? Or how can I be comfortable with you in the left? You should make like a good effort to be like, hey, I acknowledge this here. Here's like a tweet where I talk about it. Here's a video where I talk about it. Like, direct them towards that. But if it's somebody who is like acting in bad faith, then they should be disregarded and laughed at. Hysterically.
So I just want to pause there because I think it's really interesting that when you watch these videos of debate bro people, being able to debate becomes the crux of everything. It's still not quite having a logical argument, because you can have logical argument that have contradictory conclusions. There's this level of subjectivity about life that you can't get around, and frankly, that's a good thing. I do think it's really interesting that in the debate bro culture, it's the debate that is like the moral crux of the argument, more so than engaging with a rational argument itself.
Although I don't know if she knows that. Obviously, I'm not going to claim that she knows that and she's being dishonest. I think she just probably doesn't know that with this particular person, this person does believe that once you have been a Nazi, you should never be allowed on the left. You are branded a bad person for life.
This is just getting maybe a little bit redundant. So this tweet is saying, and you wonder why people don't trust white leftists. And the reason why they're saying this is because so many white leftists just kind of openly accept people who used to be Nazis. And then again, you have it where people are able to engage with Nazis more so than with Black people. Like, even in this example here, you have a Black person's tweet where Vosh is just really angry at this Black person for saying why Black people don't trust a lot of white leftists. And you have a video where this person's also reacting to me, a Black person, saying why this is an issue. And you have it where like a lot of people have more backlash towards Black people saying, hey, this is an issue. Getting people who used to be Nazis into leftism is an issue because a lot of times it can be hard to work with them, and because as far as like a numbers game, there's going to be more working class people that we can reach rather than just people who are on the alt-right. So it's like you have people saying these things and then you just like get backlash and anger. I know this person thinks they're being nice, but they've already called me pathetic and told me that I should feel embarrassed. So like, this is like a white person telling me that I should feel this way. And this is exactly what I'm talking about when I say that there's an issue of being able to connect with people who are Nazis or ex-Nazis and not even be able to talk to the Black community. This is literally why I made the last video. And it's just funny because this person is like trying to prove me wrong. And in trying to prove me wrong, he's just proving my point and he doesn't seem to notice.
Here, I have a hypothetical for all of you. I want you to actually, I'll ask you the question afterwards, okay? When a conservative content creator makes a video saying trans people have a really high rate of suicide, and they show like the 41% statistic, and they go off of that statistic and say, so obviously we should be giving help to these trans people and not letting them transition because look how much they're killing themselves. If somebody watches that and says, wow, they got data and everything to back that up, it looks like being like transitioning is bad for trans people, they should be given some kind of therapy that makes them not trans, right? Do you think that is hating trans people?
First off, in that example, that's just not actually how it happens. People aren't like, wow, I just care about trans people so much that I want to make sure that they're not going to commit suicide. And if being trans leads them to committing suicide, then they shouldn't be trans because I care about them. I just care so much about them. That's not what's going on. That's not actually the scenario. Your hypothetical is not a good hypothetical because that's not what's actually happening. In that situation, when people are making transphobic material where it's like, well, trans people commit higher suicide rates, that's coming from a place where people fundamentally believe that trans people don't have their own agency, where people believe that trans people are unable to make their own decisions for themselves. They believe that transness is a disease. So the narrative that trans people end up killing themselves goes into the common narrative that being trans is a disease, that it's a mental disorder. And then that narrative is used to force anybody who is trans to not act out their gender. And that's very violent. It's violent to force people to not be who they are, to force trans people to not be who they are. It's violent to have people assimilate like that. And that violence is the hatred we're talking about. Going out of your way to be like, well, it's not this kind of hatred, just seems a little silly because it's still this kind of hatred. And again, you have this moment where you're able to empathize with the people who dehumanize trans people in this instance, more so than you can empathize with the people who are angry about it, who are angry about that dehumanization. Or at least that's how it appears, or it's how it comes off. And that in itself, even if it's just how it comes off and that's not how you believe it in your heart, that's still an issue. That you're having this rhetoric that sends a message, whether you believe it or not, that sends a message that someone who believes that you're not as human, you should learn to be okay with that because it's not quite hatred. When trans people see that, that's going to be very, very hurtful. And to prioritize that over the people who are being oppressed, even if you're not meaning to, even the appearance of prioritizing that is an issue. Part of me is like, this is the fact, if I'm saying this, if I'm making a video about this, things are fucked. You know what I'm saying? Things are pretty messed up if this is like the state things are in. You'll have white leftists, very specifically white leftists, creating these spaces where they very much...
It's not all white leftists, by the way, okay? There are plenty of people of color who do the same exact thing. Denims is a woman of color. You know what? Here's what we'll do, okay? I actually do think BreadTube is a little too white. I'm gonna shout out.
Okay, sorry, I didn't even notice this the first time, but this is so funny to me. So Xanderhal is literally like, there's other people of color doing it. There's one other person of color I can think of. Like that's the list. That list is over.
A black leftist content creator who also streams, kind of like what I do. He's also just generally a really good content creator. You should check out his content. BreadTube is a little bit too white. I'm gonna be honest. BreadTube, it is a little bit too white. So I'm gonna help out Shark. I like his content a lot, and he's a really good dude. This is Shark 300. He makes good content. He's a funny dude. He streams, and his videos are actually edited.
This person just gave you a shout out just because I was talking about how white leftists can't connect with black creators, and he's going, that's not true. I know a black person. See? There's Shark 300.
Like I said, though, it's not just leftists, like white leftists or whatever. And I know the argument that they're about to make, or that she's about to make and everything, but it's not just, like, there are plenty of people of color involved in leftist content creation, trans people, gay people, and women, so on. It's not just straight white men that are doing this and trying to convert these Nazis. The most popular content creator in lefty YouTube is ContraPoints. I know there's obviously like TYT and whatnot, but ContraPoints is the most notorious in BreadTube, and she's a trans woman. She is white, but she's a trans woman, right?
To prove me wrong that there are other people of color who are trying to convert Nazis, he gave the example of ContraPoints who is white. Okay, like I'm sorry. Sometimes I just can't. Sometimes I just... Wow, you got me. You did it. You did it. I don't know how people are watching this and are just like, yeah, this guy, he's got it. You know? I don't know.
I'm one of the few straight white men at BreadTube. There's actually not a lot of straight white men in BreadTube, believe it or not. Not a lot.
Okay, again, I'm not even talking about your sexuality. I'm not even talking about your gender. He's just kind of going off like on this like weird rant where it's like, I didn't even talk about like your sexuality or gender. I'm just saying that the white left has a hard time connecting with Black groups. And here he is just going off like on a rant about like this and that. And it's like, I'm not even saying any of this. Like
I'm one of the few there is. I guess I can say I'm a minority. All right, continue.
Pride themselves in converting Nazis over. It's not going to happen from getting a few people to stop being Nazis.
It's not a few people. Holy shit. I'm sorry. I'm not being mean. I'm really not being mean. I'm being very, very generous.
Okay. This person has called me pathetic and has also said that I should feel embarrassed about myself if I think it's okay when there are Black people who don't want to work with ex-Nazis. So I have this theory that I think that debate bros don't know what generous means. So a generous argument, just so you know, just for people to know. So when you're creating a generous argument and you want to tear down someone's argument, basically you want to be able to repeat back their argument in a way where if they heard it, they would be like, yes, that is what I'm saying. And then you want to critique that. Okay, based off this video, he obviously is not giving me a generous argument. He either failed to because he just misunderstood, or he just doesn't know what that means. And given how many times debate bros use the word generous argument and good faith, and then they don't do it, part of me just thinks they just made up their own definition of what that is, because they just don't ever do it. Like, it's all about winning a debate. It's not about a charitable analysis. Like, I feel like these people couldn't analyze something if it slapped them in the face, because at the end of the day, they just want to debate. When you're trying to analyze something, you're not trying to win. Like, it's not about winning. You're just trying to understand something. I don't see that in debate culture. I just don't see that ever happening.
Typically, white men are being radicalized to the far right. And guess what? That may not sound like all that big a deal, but these are the community. These are the people that are getting radicalized to doing the Christchurch shooting. When we stop and we throw a wrench into the machine of the alt-right rabbit hole, we prevent future Christchurch shootings, future El Paso mall shootings, future San Diego synagogue burnings.
Converting a few Nazis over, like, even if it's just like in the hundreds of thousands, that's not that much compared to like the millions and millions and millions and millions of people we could be reaching. Like, just numbers wise. And popularizing that would of course de-radicalize Nazis like along the way, much more so than just focusing on trying to get some Nazis over. It's just like, I don't know what to do with that.
Do Black people in America need to be told about like the effects of redlining, segregation, and slavery on Black people in America to be convinced into action? Or do you think white people need to be educated on these things and to know what Black people have gone through in this country?
So I feel like he's using education and organizing interchangeably. I feel like he might be conflating the two a little bit. But education, yes, everybody should understand white supremacy and sexism and the dangers of capitalism. And everyone should be educated on these things. What I'm talking is I'm not saying that we shouldn't educate people. I'm talking about how to mobilize and create a viable leftist movement. And it seems that it would be better spent if the online left put their energy into the working class and also collaborating with people who are organizing.
Contributing to moving Florida left is a big deal, all right? And I want to do canvassing in Florida. Sadly, right now, I don't have the money to do that. I don't make all that much money, but in the future, I would love to get my audience and coordinate with someone like, obviously it wouldn't have to be Florida, I would do it anywhere, right? To try to do some canvassing. I would love to do that.
Gosh. I mean, he's saying that organizing in person and organizing in online are both important, and then he's not going to organize in person. And he's saying it's because of money, and it's like literally like you get paid to canvass. I have so many friends who are canvassers. You know, just get a canvassing job. He's not going to.
This is just a made up thing. I have not seen a single example of there being like this disconnect between these white leftist content creators like ContraPoints, H Bomber Guy, Philosophy Tube, and so on, and like the Black leftist community.
Have you looked in the mirror? I'm not really sure what you're talking about. I haven't seen any white leftists have a hard time helping Black leftists. Have you looked in the mirror? So he's saying that he hasn't seen the issue of white leftists not being able to engage with Black communities, and he's saying that because he hasn't engaged with Black communities. Like, that's what's up. You know, where have you been? You've been streaming. You've clearly just been like streaming your debate bro stuff this whole time and haven't been engaging with this stuff. So it's like, it's really funny because you're just kind of proving my point here.
But if you're a leftist and you can't connect with the Black communities who are organizing.
What does that mean? What does that mean?
You've got an issue.
What does that mean?
And then not only to not be able to engage.
What does that mean? What does that mean? What does not being able to connect with the Black community that is organizing mean?
Xanderhal, if you want to know more of what I mean, I am making a video on whiteness. And I think if you watch it, it might help you out with some stuff.
That's my job, to educate the people that don't know about this stuff. It is not my job to educate Black people on their lived experiences. That is something that if I did that, I would be absolutely criticized for it.
Again, it's fine if you want to educate people about things, but if you're going to do it in a way where, again, you're not going to let Black people have their own agency, where you're going to shame them if they don't want to work with Nazis and say that they should feel embarrassed, it's not a great way to go about it. And as far as creating a viable movement, it's not necessarily the best energy to try to convert Nazis when you could be reaching the masses of people. Comparatively, you're going to get a few Nazis over. If you try to reach the masses of people, there's tens of millions of people that are potentially going to come over very quickly. So again, if you want to have educational stuff, I think that's great, but doing it in a debate bro style that's also really dismissive of people, especially the people you claim to defend, is an issue.
I think we've seen enough of the video. I want to move this on to a debate.
And that's it. He doesn't finish my video or get to the part where I talk about the millions and millions of working class people that we could easily get to if we actually put our energy there instead of trying to get a few neo-Nazis over. I just really want to commend this person for like the good faith argument that he had. Really just some top-notch stuff. My final thoughts on this are that it's kind of funny that Xanderhal is a part of the problem that I'm talking about. And he's like, wait, what do you mean that white leftists aren't engaging with Black people? I've never heard of this. And it's like, yeah, you've never heard of this because you're not engaging with Black leftists unless it's someone like me and you're just telling me that you think I'm pathetic and should be embarrassed because I think it's okay if there are Black leftists who don't want to work with ex-neo-Nazis. You know, that's your engagement with the Black community. And that's why you don't know these things, you know? This is a part of the bigger issue that I'm talking about. It's actually beautiful. It's actually beautiful how that worked out to be such a good, like picture perfect case study of exactly what I mean. So I guess thank you for that. So I think my real closing thoughts are, I want to reach out to Xanderhal. I want to say, hey, just in a similar way that you want to reach out to these neo-Nazis and help bring them onto the left, I want to reach out to you as a debate bro and try to bring you still on the left. Just as you've taken people under your wing, I can take you under my wing. I have a book club going on. We're reading The Wretched of the Earth right now. If you join my Patreon and donate, you can join. It talks about colonization, and I think it's something that you might want to read. I'm also going to be making a video on whiteness, and I think it's, again, something that you might want to watch. Don't worry, I got you. Okay, everybody, thanks again for watching my video. Keep an eye out for an interview that I'm gonna have posting, and then, of course, I'm still working on my whiteness video. Sorry. Okay, I'm gonna get that out when it gets out. It's over when it's over. Thank you again to my patrons who make this possible. I love you all so much, and I will see you all in the next video.